Good day to all, or evening, morning to all of you, and thank you very much for joining once again our 15th edition of the ICS Leadership Insight Series live, which we hold every 2 weeks. It brings together leaders from within and very much from without the shipping industry and examines the global issues that impact trade, economics, geopolitics, technological innovation, and the implications. But this has changed. A multiplicity of regulations, including the Basel Convention, the IMO Hong Kong Convention, and the EU recycling regulation, come into force, and shipbreakers are working to recycle vessels in a safer, more environmentally friendly and sustainable ways. So today's discussion will look at the market forces on this sector and the pressure and incentives to become even more environmentally sustainable. However, we cannot ignore the long shadow that the pandemic has cast on this industry, this part of our industry, and we will hear directly about the devastating human impact that this latest wave is having, particularly in India, and the knock-on effects on seafarers. The session is being recorded and you will be able to download it at your leisure in the event that you are unable to watch it completely today. We also encourage your active participation. We've had quite a lot of questions already and we will do our very best to answer these. And thank you very much to those who have already submitted them. We will cover as many of these as we can in the time available, or we will try to provide written answers after the meeting for anything that we do not address today. So let me introduce our panel. I'm first of all delighted to welcome Anil Sharma to the panel. Anil is the founder and CEO of Global Marketing Systems, GMS, which is the world's largest buyer of ships for recycling. Welcome, Anil, and thank you very much for joining us. Next, we have Chintan Kalthia. He is the CEO of RL Shipbreaking, one of the leading ship recycling companies located at Alang on India's west coast. Welcome, Chintan. Our panel today is completed by Andrew Stevens. Andrew is Executive Director of the Sustainable Shipping Initiative. Welcome to Andrew. It's good to have you all with us, and I look forward to a good and insightful discussion. But if I may start with Anil, can you give us an overview of the current market dynamics driving ship recycling? What has changed, particularly as a result of the pandemic? Anil, please.
Thank you, Esben. Thank you for inviting me to join on this very important session. Needless to say that 2020 and 2021 has been a year of unprecedented health crisis and really global human tragedy. So I think that's the first recognition, especially this year's, particularly when India is struggling with this huge pandemic. Our hearts goes out to people who are fighting this pandemic. Commercially, it has been a year of extraordinary highs and lows in the ship recycling industry. Middle of last quarter, we saw a market collapse by about 25%, meaning ship values in the ship recycling sector fall by about 25%. And after about a pause of about 30 days, when there was a lockdown in India, the market came back just booming with a very sharp V-shaped recovery, which has not stopped since the Q3 of last year. And it went all the way from about $300 per ton to today, to about, which is $550 per ton, a recovery of almost 70% after a drop of about 25%. COVID, of course, was a big driver for all this. In terms of the demand, it never really dropped per se, but as sellers of vessels, as traders, as intermediaries, we really struggled, and we still struggle as to this day, to get ships from A to B. A lot of these vessels that go to Indian subcontinent have Indian crew, and as you know, these days it's really a struggle to get Indian crew out of India, number one, and to get the vessels down to India. What kind of ships did we see last year? It was primarily bulk carriers. 50% of the vessels that were delivered for recycling last year were bulk carriers. If people are not aware, the biggest, I think, sector within the dry bulk was VLOCs. I think we delivered almost 30 VLOCs, which was a record year for VLOCs. And I think most of the old converted fleet of VLOCs have now been recycled. Following the VLOCs, we had the tankers and, of course, some container vessels. So far this year, due to the high freight markets, we don't see much supply of dry bulk or container vessels. But we do see a lot of offshore vessels, and we do see quite a bit of cruise ships that are coming for recycling. The other point that I think that's earmarked last year and this year is the rapid expansion of Hong Kong Convention compliant yards in India. So this day we have about 92 yards that are Hong Kong compliant, which is amazing. I think if it all goes the way it is going, by next year, India should have all yards which are going to be Hong Kong compliant. And Chintan was one of the first 4 yards that actually started this pace of Hong Kong compliant yards. So congratulations, Chintan. You guys started this 4 yards, and today we have 92. So that's a big thing towards sustainable recycling. What's driving this market? Obviously, is the commodities. Those who are falling commodities, all metals are at record highs. The steel market is at record highs. Iron ore, steel scrap, steel rebars. Most of these commodities are record highs, which is really improving the price for steel. There is also a drop in steel production in China, and China has stopped or reduced, not stopped, have reduced the exports of steel, and that has also pushed prices high in the Indian subcontinent. Of course, government spending towards infrastructure is also one of the other drivers that is raising these prices. How do I see the rest of the year? Pretty much stable. I think if there's any correction, that would come pretty much after about a year, where we see some price corrections coming into the market. I think the final comment I would like to make is overall, where do we see, and maybe this is, Esben, something we're going to be discussing later on, but about sustainable recycling. Because I think this is, to me, is the elephant in the room. And my concern is that how are we going to lose residual value? I subscribe to what is called subscribe. There's a principle called the 25-25, meaning you normally obtain 25% of the residual value of an asset after you recycle your ship after 25 years. So 25 years was a normal life cycle of a vessel, and the residual value would be 25%. So far, that still exists. Will it exist in the future? That's a big question for the ship owners, to decide. The other thing that why I'm saying this is an important business is because you said in the opening that the 3 Ds of recycling: dirty, damaging, and dangerous. I hope by the time we are done, we substitute this terminology with the 3 Rs: reduce, recycle, and reuse, because I think this is what drives recycling in the Indian subcontinent. It's not necessarily the cheap wages or environmental regulations, but because I think the Indian subcontinent excels in these three elements. I want to end because this little my opening with a little story to show the impact of regulations, because we're going to discuss Hong Kong Convention, Basel Convention, waste regulation, EU ship recycling regulation. We want a Japanese just to show what is the real life example of these regulations. Back in June of 2020, we bought a pure car carrier, a very small pure car carrier from a Japanese owner. The ship was flagged Panama. She offloaded cars in Belgium. Then she went down to Spain to discharge more cars, then went down to Turkey to discharge the last batch of cargo. After that, she was sold for recycling. It was bought by us, and we sold it for recycling in Turkey. But while the ship was discharging cargo right around in Turkey, the Japanese owners received a message from the Belgian authorities that they had indeed violated the waste shipment regulation. And if they continue with the sale, it would be deemed illegal. The Japanese owners didn't want to, default or not meet the obligations. For the next 3, 4, 5 months, the lawyers were discussing with Belgium how they can find a solution. After about 6 months of negotiations, they couldn't find a solution. So they decided to go back to Spain and start the paperwork for the waste shipment regulation. So today is May, almost the end of May, we are coming to June. 1 year later, the paperwork has still not completed. The Japanese owners pretty much have lost all of the value of the vessel. The OPEX and movement alone, I think today that asset is negative $1.5 million. And so when we talk about ship recycling and all the issues, I think it's very important to understand what are we doing with this regulation. Is EU ship recycling regulation, the waste regulation, the Basel regulation, is this really helping ship recycling industry? The multiplicity of regulation, what does it do in real life? Is it really improving standards? My answer is no, it doesn't. I think we have an excellent model that the Japanese have done, which is the Hong Kong Convention, where they did this. So I would like to open that, later on have a discussion on that as well. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Anil. And you make many great points. And it's interesting that the recycling, or what we used to call the demolition market, in a way has followed container and dry bulk market. I suppose it's not that surprising. They had a pretty terrible first quarter, first half 20, and then in Q3 and 4, these markets came roaring back, and much the same has happened in euros. But the point you're making, the example you've just cited of this small car carrier and all that's happened, I've heard similar cases, and I think it is a very, very good example of where well-meaning and well-thought-out regulation with perfectly good motives imposed in different jurisdictions can lead to the wrong result, the unintended result. And I think I can honestly say, because very early in my career, I started actually working as a broker on demolition. So in those days it was Taiwan and Hong Kong, if you can believe it. That's how long ago it is. But anyway, there's no question that things have improved tremendously. And the Hong Kong Convention and the certification of these many yards, these 92 yards, by major classification societies is a very, very good and positive thing. And I suspect, from all I've heard and read, that due recognition has simply not been given. Due acknowledgement has not been given of these improvements. And actually, you can say the same thing about other segments of the industry. The tanker industry has made incredible improvements, and yet, there's not really awareness of it. You have to read the statistics, which nobody bothers to do. But so there is an improvement, and I think that all concerned should be congratulated on that. So thank you anyway for giving us such a good overview and as an introduction. So Chintan, we'll move on to you. You're at the heart of this latest wave of the pandemic, and we can only imagine that the issues you're facing on the ground, on the spot, and the stories we've seen on the news and so forth are terrible and heart-wrenching. And but please, if you could tell us your own experiences, I think it's very useful for our participants to hear, in a way, from the horse's mouth what is really happening on the ground. So Chintan, please go ahead with Andrew, and then hope very much that we can come back to you. Andrew, if I may fast forward to you, if you could tell us about the Ship Recycling Transparency Initiative and why you think that it is important and relevant to the sector. Andrew, please.
Great, thank you, Esben. And firstly, echo Anil's comments and feel very much for all affected in India, particularly right now, but across the world, who have lost somebody personal to them or are in themselves also suffering during this very difficult time and pandemic. Thank you, Esben, and thank you, ICS, for inviting the Ship Recycling Transparency Initiative. So I'd like to give a brief intro to what this initiative is about, who is currently signing up, and also to touch on what Anil touched on at the end there as well, and through his commentary about the potential for recycling and circularity in shipping, which is one of the key parts of why we need to have safe and responsible ship recycling. So firstly, what is the SRTI? Its mission is to aim to accelerate a voluntary market-driven approach to responsible ship recycling practices driven by and through transparency, subsequently improving decision-making about ship recycling and contributing to creating an industry-wide level playing field. We have four key objectives: improve transparency across the shipping value chain, increase disclosure of ship recycling policies and practices, enable and encourage cargo owners, financial stakeholders and others to make improved and informed decisions that will in turn drive improved performance. And lastly, create that level playing field for ship owners, covering that lifespan of a ship. But why data and transparency? These are key levers, of course, and evidence factors, proving some of the points that Anil was making also in terms of reduce, reuse and recycle. So being transparent about ship owners' ship recycling policies and practices, we believe, will create fair competition, improve performance and hold the industry to account for their vessels from cradle to grave. And that the ship recycling transparency will help financial stakeholders, cargo owners and other stakeholders be accountable for their supply chain, the risks within that supply chain, assist in making informed decisions, and also then reward good practice through the market. So who are the signatories? The current mix is that we are 28 signatories, 12 disclosing ship owners, 5 cargo owners, 7 financial stakeholders, and others who are interested stakeholders. Most recent signatories are Swiss Re Corporate Solutions from the financial stakeholder group, and this week, just yesterday, we're very pleased to announce another additional disclosing ship owner, NYK Line, who has vessels across multiple segments. So I've mentioned stakeholder groups, but what is their influence? What is it they can assist here? So for ship owners, they make a commitment to disclose their approach to ship recycling, with their brand being recognized for its leadership in sustainability. And as an SRTI signatory, they're associated with transparent and responsible ship recycling. Ship owners can draw on the SRTI data disclosed by their peers and learn about ship owners' approaches to ship recycling. The learning is very important here and helps support bring down barriers for those that are not normally involved in ship recycling and are kind of mystified by what it is, and also naturally based on those stories of the industry and its past are worried or concerned about the risks that may be encountered. Financial stakeholders, we believe they have a very powerful role in leveraging their influence as across many other sustainability requirements in shipping, such as decarbonisation and so on, but in particular to drive transparency for responsible ship recycling. The value to financial stakeholders who seek information on which to base their risk management strategies, investments, lending and risk coverage from ship owners, this data allows them to meet the growing expectation of their own stakeholders. And they can use the SRTI data to develop incentives to drive further safe and responsible ship recycling practices through the market. So really partnering in supporting, not just having the tools to manage the consequences for not meeting certain targets that may be set in portfolios and lending risk profiles, but also to support and partner with those that they engage in trade to help bring about this safe and responsible ship recycling practice by sharing data and reverting to other information to hand to compare with. Cargo owners, shippers, they are increasingly demanding transparency across their entire supply chain, again driven by their own client base. And by signing up to the SRTI, cargo owners demonstrate their commitment by associating their brand with transparency and responsible ship recycling. And they are able to seek and obtain the information to assist and base their sourcing related decisions on, allowing them to meet the growing expectations of customers within their own value chain for a more transparent and accountable one. They can help develop incentives and build these into the existing supplier codes of conduct and supplier sustainability strategies. And they may set up specific ship recycling transparency data required to meet their minimum requirements in their procurement processes. So again, the SRTI data helps them hold shipping and its industry to account and contribute to raising the bar. I mentioned the learning part, and we call for engagement and learning and overcoming those barriers on the sustainability journey. And this very much is a journey, and I think ship recycling, as has already been mentioned, has been on its own journey and has clear aims and goals across the ship owners and ship recycling facilities in terms of investments made and progress made so far. This is an open initiative. It's for all ship owners of any size to disclose. It's not a standard nor a rating, and we don't filter the data in any way. The data stands and falls on its own merit as to what is disclosed. And there's a recognition that, you know, this is ship owners showing what they are acting upon today in terms of those policies and procedures, and it's a journey. So the disclosures made can be revised from time to time when a ship owner is making its own progress and wants to change and disclose differently. We're also updating the disclosure in terms of development of the data that is useful for those stakeholders to use in moving the needle and adding pressure for change, positive change. It's really where collaboration and learning can take place, whether a signatory or not, i.e. you can learn from those disclosures already made and available. There are no barriers to accessing the data. This is open on our platform, and with one click you can see a ship owner's disclosure without any need for any registrations or anything. As I mentioned, the ship lifespan and the importance of circularity in shipping. To maximize that value that Anil also talked about comes very much to, you know, what is recyclable, what is available to refurbish or to reuse rather than go to landfill. And current shipping regulation really lacks a clear link to the ship life cycle and the circular economy. Within ship recycling, both IMO Hong Kong Convention and the EU SRR focus on the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships, but fail to consider design for recycling or the life of materials refurbished or reused after recovery from a vessel. And whilst they were drafted during a time when circular economy principles were far less advanced or even widely discussed as they are now, both pieces of regulations require the development and upkeep of an inventory of hazardous materials, IHM, which keeps track of a number of hazardous substances within the structures and components of a ship and must remain with the vessel from building through to recycling. This marks a real significant step in ensuring traceability and accountability across the ship's life cycle, regardless of how many times the vessel may change hands in those 20, 25 or 30 years, and can be seen as a key first step towards greater circularity and collaboration through the life cycle, and again maximize that value towards the end of its life. So looking at shipping through a life cycle lens, when investing in a new vessel, do we consider how it will be recycled? When selling a vessel for further trading, do we make sure the new owner will recycle responsibly further on? And ship recycling is an E, S and G issue and need to be looked at in equal measure. Downstream waste management is important, but so is the PPE and making sure hazardous materials are handled safely. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. It strikes me that the SRTI is your industry's equivalent of the Poseidon principles. It's part of a trend. It's part of a trend to whereby the customer, be it the charterer, shipper, wants to know that the counterparty they're dealing with are doing things in a responsible way. And I think that the goals and aspirations of what you're trying to do are laudable, and I don't think any responsible ship owner would argue that. I think what is important, though, is that your use of the word collaboration. Something like this works much, much better if all the parties buys into it, instead of going back to the example that Anil mentioned before, which is where bureaucracy it just interferes and causes just completely unnecessary problems that could have been avoided. And I do stress, in my opinion, from what I've seen, especially in recent years, most ship owners are very responsible and they want to do this the right way, but they would prefer to do it in a way that is sensible and logical. It's like any regulation. If regulation works in a laboratory but not in real life, it's no use. So, but anyway, thank you for giving us the view. It's interesting to know that financial institutions and cargo interests are also buying into this, and wish you the best with it, and thanks again. So now, Chintan, you are back. Can you see and hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. We're looking forward to, as I said before, you've been at the heart of this latest wave of the pandemic. We can only imagine the issues that you're having to face on the ground. We've all, as I said before, seen stories in the news, but you are very well placed to tell us how it is for real, and we know that it's extremely difficult, but please, over to you.
Thank you, Esben. First of all, I'd like to thank ICS to just giving me opportunity to participate in this webinar. And it's happy to see Anil bhai after a long time. Thank you. As you said, the second wave in India is compared to, it hard so hit compared to first wave. And especially the whole system, like the government and all the authorities and the population, entire population of India, was totally unexpected, this situation. And it was out of control, but slowly now the things are coming in place. And as whole world is, facing this second wave, India is a part is not out of that, but compared to first wave, India is facing a bit more stronger this second wave of COVID this time. We're talking about ship recycling and Alang. So when India is also being, hit hard by this COVID second wave, Alang is also part of that. But luckily, Alang is being, we got only 3 workers who work around the ship recycling in Alang. They found COVID positive and treated positively, and they're being discharged from hospital so far. None of any casualties or death have been recorded and registered by any government authorities in Alang area, where the ship recycling is, taking place in Alang. I believe there are a lot of reasons that the position in Alang is better, because we were instructed and we were strictly following the COVID protocol from first wave for all the workers and entire team in Alang. And we have given training for our team, first of all. And the same thing we have implemented to all workers, that what the protocol they need to follow while this COVID pandemic. And since the workers, keep on repeating this training, they were very well known to this situation. So that's one of the reason. Second reason is since first wave of COVID, a lot of workers went to their own native because they are afraid, their family was afraid too. And many of them who left Alang in the first wave never came back to Alang so far. And as Anil bhai told earlier, since last 6-8 months, the freight market is doing so good, so number of ship coming to Alang is less, and more owners want top dollars, so they are preferring the Pakistan and Bangladesh where HKC compliance are less. So Alang is, almost like below 50% in last 6-8 months for all this reason. So workers were not coming back to Alang because they found not the permanent work for them in Alang for last 6-8 months. And since the second wave hit Alang very hard, the number of workers in Alang less. And the second wave brought so much difficulties for government and authorities, for medical institute, that they were not able to supply enough oxygen gas for the people who is suffering from the second wave. So almost like 3-4 weeks ago, I don't know exact date, but government announced that a very strict measure for the oxygen usage, that none of any industry able to get oxygen for their production and utilities, since they instructed all the oxygen manufacturing units to supply to only medical facilities and institutes in India, because it was very much needed also, because number of patient is increasing compared to what infrastructure was having with the hospitals and in India. So now, since that the Alang is totally stopped or paused, because we only have 2 raw material to recycle ship. One is oxygen and the other is LP gas. So since oxygen is not available in Alang, none of any activity is going on in yard. Some activity like just management of some material is possible, because the normal routine procedure is not possible without oxygen in Alang. And since there is no oxygen, a lot of yards stop their work, because without oxygen they don't have anything to do. In that situation, lot of workers have also leaving Alang from last 2 weeks. They cannot sit in this pandemic without work, and there is no oxygen, so no recycler can offer any work to them because there is no activity going on in the yard. The same time, as Anil bhai told earlier, the number of ship coming to Alang, because the crew changing situation is banned in Dubai and in Singapore, because most of the ship now coming through the cash buyer as is where is. And these 2 ports are the majorly participating sending ship to India. So this is also a situation where cash buyer are not able to bring their ship into India very easily what they were doing earlier. Same time, like this pandemic brought kind of a difficulties, which is also now giving pain to ship recyclers, because in first wave, it was a force majeure and the entire country was called under lockdown. And this time it's partially locked down, depend on state-wise. It's not the nationwide lockdown. And this not force majeure bringing difficulties to ship recycler in way of handling the finance and banking system, because the operation is not taking place because of oxygen gas, and the formalities of payment and banking system remain on same schedule. And it is not a matter of 2 to 4 days that we can handle such gap, but it is matter of more than almost 3-4 weeks has passed, and maybe 2-3 weeks more it's going to take. So this is the situation where the ship recycler is started facing about it. And as the ship being recycled has more than 90%, we recovered steel out of it, which we use into to making more steel. So the re-rolling mills and steel units, they also need oxygen gas for their process. And as I mentioned, that it's government strict announcement that none of any industry will get any oxygen gas for their production. So they are also not in operation. So they are not even able to, buy regular goods from the recycling yards. So the plants who use the secondary steel is also not in operation. So this is how this second wave of pandemic brought Alang in totally pause mode from last 3 to 4 weeks. And I see last 2 days the number of cases is being reducing. So let's hope and let's pray it come down faster and the normal life restore as soon as possible, and then maybe along come back into the normal trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chintan. I mean, it is, you describe really a perfect storm, for want of a better way of putting it, because without the oxygen and people leaving the area and the difficulty of crew change, it makes the position for Alang extremely difficult, extremely challenging, and it's very difficult to see any short-term way out of it. But of course, we have to be optimistic that this will be brought under control, and that eventually something resembling normal conditions will return. But it's I mean, a 50% drop in business is all those many yards in the area. I mean, that is major. So we can genuinely we must hope and pray for better times ahead for this very important industry and a very important employer of people. So I would now like to, we have many questions. One that particularly is asked, and this goes back again to the regulatory side. What are your views on the differences between the Hong Kong Convention and European provisions? And what is needed to encourage the European Union to support the global recycling market? I think, Anil, if I could start with you, please.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer this from the legal perspective, but I can answer this from the how do you say, the real world applications. I think the real key difference, and Chintan probably can chip in because he's been probably studying this more carefully, is that there are two issues. One is the downstream waste management. Right now, what we do under the Hong Kong Convention is of course do your IHM and provide the waste to the government institution that collects the waste and disposes it off appropriately. I think the EU ship recycling. First of all, Esben, the EU regulation is based on the Hong Kong Convention, so that's what they've studied, and so it doesn't say that Hong Kong is not good. It's just they went a step further. And the second key difference is I think the hospitals. The reason why India seems to have not any yard that has been compliant with Hong Kong, with EU ship recycling regulation, is because of these two things. There are 3 government hospitals, but I think there are more specific criteria of what medical facilities should look like, and also what should be the waste management downstream. I think that's far as I know is these are 2 main differences. Otherwise, I think they agree on most things. I mean, I don't know, Chintan, you probably can answer that better as a yard owner.
These are the 2 main differences. Now, Chintan, would you like to tell us your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to keep it a short. Like in EUSRR, on the first page, it's mentioned that to expedite the procedure to bring Hong Kong Convention in force, we hereby propose EUSRR. So why we always talk about the difference? EUSRR is basically to expedite only HKC procedure to bring into the force. And why there are a lot of things which is not mentioned in Hong Kong Convention, which is not there at all technically, which is there in EUSRR, that's why it's creating mess. The only thing is what EUSRR and Hong Kong Convention is bringing technical gap as a recycler, that I would say it's what Anil Bhai told just, downstream waste management facility and the medical facility is the only gap left today. Rest of, I hope, I mean, if you have gone through the audit reports of the EU Commission and the EU third-party auditor, rest of all major non-compliance thing is complied by many ship recyclers in India. So today we can say the only gap is downstream waste management facility and the medical facility. But I am very sure very soon it will be also sorted out, because the authorities and all stakeholders are working very well on that. The only thing and important gap is by EU SRR, they need to come to the at least level of the improvement India have made in last 5 years. And this improvement took 5 years. So whatever gap still remain, maybe it takes 6 to 8 months, and then we will be, sorted out. So that's what is only remaining now, and that's what the gap today we are talking about.
But if I may ask a personal question, is your perception that officialdom in the EU are listening and taking note of what is being done, or are they being totally unreasonable, just to be very frank?
Esben, if I may, to me, it is more of a political pressure. I think this is the challenge we have. If you look at these regulations that the EU ship recycling, the Basel waste, well, the Basel and waste obviously is not designed towards ship recycling. EU ship recycling regulation is, but as Chintan said, it's actually supposed to be a stopgap measure until the Hong Kong Convention is ratified, and it comes into force. And so now it has taken a life of its own, because all this, as you use the multiplicity of regulations, is creating more of what regulations we are supposed to follow. From a personal standpoint, I think the EU ship recycling regulation today is doing more harm than good. If I have to be blunt about it.
But this is a criticism that I've often heard, and to go back to the level playing field point that Andrew made, the higher the profile the owner, and the more public the company is, that owner faces, frankly, different pressures than a small family-owned owner who can, I'm not saying is not operating properly, but they are able to do a deal and deliver a ship in accordance with the regulations. What just sometimes seems to be happening is that the larger, well-known companies are having to go beyond what the regulations actually are, and this plays into the point that Andrew was talking about, the level playing field. And I don't personally think that this is a good thing. But Andrew, if you would like to also comment on this point, the EU and the Hong Kong Convention.
Yeah, I think it's back to the point I was making on collaboration, and that's the public-private collaboration as well. And it's partnering with the industry to make things happen. There's been tremendous progress, as Chintan and Anil mentioned, over the past years in Alang, particularly, and that should be recognized and rewarded through additional efforts to make things happen. The additional requirements that were pointed out are the downstream waste management and the proximity of hospitals, etc. Of course, is arguably outside of the control of the shipyards and the ship recycling facilities. That is, government, national, regional, local responsibilities to provide. And back to level playing field, I guess that's where the sort of fairness question comes in terms of scrutiny and demands by the EU SRR being equal within the EU whitelist or European countries, and then Alang or South Asia. Those facilities are also under the responsibility of national or local authorities in the European countries. Similarly, should an Alang shipyard become a member of the EU whitelist, then you would expect the same scrutiny and audit cycles to occur within the European shipyards, which I know is a discussion point as well. So I think it's about recognizing that there is a demand, there's a pressure to use yards. 90%, I think, are recycled in South Asia. That is a fact, and of course the Basel ban amendment adds to the difficulties for the EU whitelist accreditation of shipyards in South Asia. So I think it's coming to the table, collaborating and working positively together to find the way forward, rather than always putting the barriers in place, because there's definitely a will and desire, as we see, and has been evidenced by the improvements in Alang with ship recycling facilities, to improve.
Thank you. Andrew, very much. One question that comes up very regularly, I'm sure also to all of you, is as you know, decarbonization is the great goal of society as a whole, and most certainly in shipping as well. And a tremendous amount of effort is underway in this area. And there is, of course, the question: you order a ship today, you must provide for it, be it dual fuel or a future fuel, so that you can convert, because today's fuels on a 25-year vessel life is not really realistic. So the question keeps being asked is, because of this future ahead of us towards a decarbonized world, will this actually increase the level of recycling? I mean, in the case of the tanker segment, as you were saying, Anil, at the moment, the tanker market is not doing well. So this is likely to be the main source of sellers, if you like, whereas the dry bulk containers are doing extremely well. But let's take market aside. Just as a principle, is the future in terms of decarbonization likely to have a major influence on ship tanking?
Is that for me, Esben, or?
For you, Anil, sorry, yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure I fully understood the question, but the point is when I talked about residual value, that as long as it's a good value for a vessel that is 20 plus years old, that encourages an owner to sell. For example, today for a VLCC, the recycling price in the Indian subcontinent is in excess of 20 million. Just a couple of months or a few months ago, this was the second-hand price of a VLCC. So if you have, and especially all of us know about this, I think Lloyd's List reported more than 200 ships that are running in the shadows, especially in this region. What's going to happen to those ships at some stage, and what does it do to the global demand and global chartering rates? I think the key is to balance the ESG, the issues, and at the same time not lose value. The regulation, this is what ICS, this is what IMO, what we're trying to balance it out. At how do we create, decarbonization, it's a big thing. So that's number one. Number two is what happens when a new kind of, vessels come for recycling. I think the overall, as Chintan mentioned, 90% is steel. And so that still remains unless we start building ships from fiberglass or some other composite material, which, the hope then, which if can be recycled, it's still good. I think that the propulsion technology, it's probably that can still be handled unless you change to nuclear. Then probably no. But I think other than that, any other type of technology, propulsion might still work. And I think that's what is sorely needed: a robust, market for old vessels, so the new technologies can start coming in and helps us all. I don't know if I answered that question, Esben, but
yes, I don't think I phrased my question all that well, but you have actually answered it, and I think the 25 is a very relevant point, and I think it's a good measurement, absolutely. We have about 7-8 minutes left, so I will ask each of you now to, in 1.5 minutes each, or certainly no more than that, give me a summary of what you've heard today, and any thoughts that you would like to leave with our participants who are watching this session. I'll start with you, please, Andrew.
Thank you, Esben. Very interesting discussion, and I think the last point there about the decarbonization in shipping is also a major transition and is a journey that requires, sober, clear thought and planning. And this will impact those on this sustainability journey. So there's market-based measures. There's, of course, regulatory landscape, as there is in ship recycling, which will impact this and will very likely bring a waterfall at some point of vessels that will be up for its end of life and recycling. And we can see that in the cruise industry where, due to COVID particularly, there's a turn of vessels into recycling at much earlier stage in those vessels' lives, and they are not trickling through the different tiers in the markets. So the ability for vessels to turn several times across the long tail of ship owners prior to that 25 years being reached is perhaps a reality that may come and needs to be planned for carefully. So I think an important point was touched on there, Esben, by whoever asked that question. And as I say, sustainability in shipping and ship recycling is a journey for both. That collaboration and learning across the value chain is extremely important. The other message I'd like to leave the audience with is that the safe recycling of a ship and its component parts really starts at the design phase. It's the responsibility of all owning and operating through the ship's life cycle. And this is where data and transparency is key in terms of managing what those hazardous and non-hazardous materials, which still contribute to value at end of life, is very important to maintain. Trace throughout the life of its ship is many years, as been said in this webinar, and is essential for proper and safe handling at the end of life. So the more that's invested at the beginning to increase the potential for reuse, refurbishment or recycle and increase that value at end of life is really paying it forward. And I think that needs to be taken into account by all that are contributing to the planning of the new generation of vessels, given the new future zero carbon fuels. And the last point to leave everybody with is, based on that data and transparency, of course, knowledge is a key driver of change and is able to be used in different parts of that value chain to mitigate, minimize risks for both people and the environment. And of course, the economic factors increase the value that's held and most potential realizable for the last remaining ship owner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Chintan, 1 minute, 15 seconds.
All right. I like to leave my conclusion message for this webinar is the whole shipping world need to recognize the improvement and development what especially Alang have made in last 5 years. I'm not concluding here that we have done with our improvements, but the change what happened in last 5 years is drastically remarkable, and the world, the shipping community and all the stakeholders need to recognize this. And if everybody agree, we also need to have a one level playing regulation, guideline, policy for ship recycling to at least just leave out the ship recyclers who are into there to cater in capacity for ship recycling, being like India. Give them a proper standard so they can stick to that standard and do the job. Last 5 years, as a stakeholder, ship recyclers have done almost 80% of their requirement, since the owners and all other stakeholders have not yet done so far. They are coming very slowly. We need to bring them faster, and we need to bring all the pending stakeholder faster on the bus of Hong Kong Convention, bring into force, and then the progress can be visualized. So that is my the closing message. We need to do best for all, from the all stakeholders to bring Hong Kong Convention into force. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chintan. Anil, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I mean, the message I want to leave your audience with is, I mean, ESG has become a big word in today's environment, and we all feel the economic, social, governance issues should be honored. I think in the ship recycling, as you mentioned earlier, that the image still is of the 3Ds, and that's not fair. I think ship recycling by itself, it's a very green industry. You know, the reduce, recycle, reuse. We are publishing a lot of reports out there to show how the steel that comes out of a steel actually helps reduce the carbon footprint and so forth. So the model exists. The Hong Kong Convention, the IMO's Hong Kong Convention, is a great regulation that gives a clear roadmap on how to comply with ESG criteria. But somehow along the way, a lot of side noises have come in that somehow implies that it's not the case. I think we need to move away from that. Andrew said things about collaboration and transparency. I welcome that. There are good yards and bad yards everywhere. We have traveled all over the world. We have more than 500 people who have visited from overseas, India, maybe even 1,000, from all walks of life, from the bankers to ship owners. And they recognize the work the progress that has been made. And we need to applaud that. So when good work is done, it needs to be recognized. When the certain yards that are not doing good work, they need to be recognized as well. So I think what I would ask is institutions like ICS and the members to go out and listen, learn, and lead. Not just get taken away by this very biased and selective voice that keeps on saying it's bad, bad, bad. Just to go and look at it with their own eyes, even if they feel that the pictures are photoshopped. So let's change the 3Ds with the 3Rs, and recognize Hong Kong Convention as the criteria that we should measure the ESG component of ship recycling.
Thank you very much, Anil. I think the 3Rs is a good takeaway. I think that there has not been full recognition of the great progress made, and I would call upon politicians in particular to pay attention to this and to recognize the improvements made, and not just come with a lot of new rules and regulations into areas where economic conditions are very, very different. I think this kind of top-down approach is in many cases most inappropriate, and please listen to the people on the ground and go and see for yourself and learn what's going on, and then praise where praise is due, which is in many cases it is. So thank you very much. Now I have just a minute or two left. I want to highlight the Seafarers International Relief Fund, which is something that has been set up in the last recent days. And we were very happy to hear yesterday, even Chancellor Merkel of Germany has taken hold of this issue. We in the Mission to Seafarers, the Seafarers Charity, ISWAN, Sailor Society, Stella Maris, and many others are working to deliver urgent support for seafarers and their families in India. The target is $1 million, and I think we are already actually ahead of that. But please support this initiative and how to donate. There's a slide being displayed now on how to donate. Please give generously. This is really, really important. We want ship owners and all stakeholders in the industry to help, particularly on this issue. And the charities whose names I mentioned are working around the clock on this. We need your help, and please give generously, particularly those of you in the container and dry bulk segments who are doing quite well. So on that note, a very good morning, evening, and good evening to you all. And thank you very, very much to our panelists, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.